Good evening, everybody, and welcome to all participants to this evening's webinar to discuss corruption and COVID-19 intersect with the leaders of some of our prime law enforcement agencies in South Africa. My name is Mark Heywood. I'm facilitating this evening's discussion. It's in fact the fourth in a series of webinars exploring COVID-19 and corruption, which have been organized by the Health Sector Anti-Corruption Forum, which is convened by the Special Investigation Unit. This evening's webinar has been timed to coincide with International Anti-Corruption Day, which takes place next Thursday, the 9th of December, and I think gives us an opportunity to take stock and explore the issues around corruption, and particularly corruption around COVID-19 this year. And for this purpose, we have the rare privilege of being joined by three leaders of leading law enforcement agencies in South Africa. Rare because I think it's probably unusual to have them in the same virtual room, although I would imagine that they find themselves in the same physical room from time to time. But let me just introduce them, although they will be known to many of you. First up on, I don't know whether it's the right or left or the bottom or top, but Advocate Shamila Batohi. Advocate Batohi is the National Director of Public Prosecutions. Welcome, Advocate Batohi, and thank you very much for making time this evening to participate in this panel. Thank you. The second person that I'll introduce is General Godfrey Lebeya, Advocate General Godfrey Lebeya. We have three advocates with us this evening, who is the head of the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, otherwise known as the Hawks. Thank you. Welcome, General Lebeya, and thank you for your time as well. Thank you. And the final panelist has been with us once before, I think in the first of these series, another advocate, Advocate Andy Mothibi, the head of the Special Investigation Unit. Thank you, Advocate Mothibi, for making time on a Sunday evening in December to help with this conversation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mark.
I just wanted to say something before I turn it over to our panelists. We're now 9 months into a COVID-19 epidemic, which in South Africa has just passed the tragic mark of 22,000 deaths, probably much higher because those are deaths that are officially recorded as COVID-19 related, and I believe 800,000 plus infections. I think back in March, when a national state of disaster was declared, many of us steeled ourselves to take measures to protect ourselves against this new virus and to follow the advice and the instructions of the president and of the government and our communities. But I think what we didn't expect was that it would lead to the resurgence of another epidemic, which is the epidemic of corruption, which is precisely what it has done, and it has shocked many of us to the core, particularly because, as the Director General of the World Health Organization pointed out, it has led directly to the deaths of many healthcare workers, particularly when you consider the corruption around personal protective equipment. The last I looked was that several hundred doctors, nurses, porters, security people, administrators who work within our healthcare system have died as a result of COVID-19. I think the extent of this corruption was evident as well from slides I saw preparing for tonight's webinar presented by the SIU, I think, to Parliament, that suggested that up to 2/3 of expenditure related to supplementary budgets for COVID-19 is under investigation. I don't know if that is correct or not. I'll stand to be corrected by eminent panelists in the course of this discussion. That is the context for this discussion, a matter of life and death for this nation. So I'm going to hand over to our panelists, and what we're going to start this evening by doing is just laying a foundation by asking each of the panelists to spend 5 or 6 minutes just talking about the role of each particular agency in tackling COVID-19 corruption. What have been the challenges that you face? What progress can you report to us? And perhaps what achievements have been made? And I want to start probably because it's been very much at the forefront with Advocate Mothibi from the Special Investigating Unit. Then I will go to Advocate Batohi and then to General Godfrey Lebeya. So Advocate Mothibi, can you kick off this evening's discussion? Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Mark. Let's appreciate the opportunity again, once more, to interact with the public on this very important topic around health sector anti-corruption drive, and of course with specific reference to COVID-19. But as we will all have it in our thrust to ensure that the country wins the war against corruption, we may also just talk about corruption in general. But Mark, you're right. These webinars, I think they've really played a very important role in galvanizing and raising awareness to the public. They are indeed coordinated by the Special Investigating Unit, but I need to just add and say we're doing that on behalf of the Anti-Corruption Task Team, which is chaired by General Lebeya and co-chaired by National Director of Public Prosecution, Advocate Batohi. So it's pleasing to see them, in this webinar as well. I think it really just shows the commitment that we all have. But now, Mark, you just mentioned a ballpark figure. I think you're pretty much on the point. Of all those figures that you have mentioned, 10.3 billion worth of alleged irregular contracts are under the investigation of the Special Investigating Unit. And of course, as we have said before, is that since the President signed the proclamation for the SIU to investigate this contract, we've really galvanized the resources, and which is one of the challenges, of course, that we face in making sure that we rearrange our resources such that we can meet the demands of this challenging investigation. Internally, we've had to rearrange resources from other investigations, but ensuring that they really do not suffer. I mean, we do have other investigations like in the SOEs, ESCOM, Transnet, and the others. But we've made significant progress, Mark, in this COVID-19 investigation, as the President announced that in giving the proclamation, he gave us 6 weekly period to report to him. The latest of which was on the 25th of November. So as of that time, about of the 10.3 billion that's under investigation, we have about 10 matters which are at the special tribunal, valued at about 259 million, which are underway to be adjudicated by the special tribunal for purposes of recovery. Mark, a significant amount really just indicates to us, when we check in percentage terms, we have completed about 26% of the investigations, which translates to about 164 contracts. The contracts that are still under investigation translate to about 51%, which is about 1,541. The 26% is valued at 3.5 billion. That really shows significant progress. And the ones under investigation is 6.8 billion. So the reason why I'm sketching all of this is just so that the public could know that in making this progress, and we are clear that had it not been for the collaboration of the colleagues in the Fusion Center, which includes NPA, includes Hawks, we would really not have been in a position where we record such significant progress. Of course, a big effort, is put by the investigators, but we are of the view that the progress that we have made sends out a positive message. It sends out a message that we will not relent in dealing with the wrongdoing in this COVID-19 investigation. Last week, we met as the Health Sector Anti-Corruption Forum, and we touched on various aspects of the health sector, including COVID-19. Mark, I really want to commend all the players in the Health Sector Anti-Corruption Forum, the likes of yourself, Corruption Watch, Section 27, all the law enforcement agencies and government departments. I think we are making great progress, and we have registered a message which I am of the view that it is deterrent to all those would-be corrupt people or corruptors and corruptees. So, Mark, didn't indicate how many minutes we have as we open, but I'd like to just pause here and give my colleagues an opportunity.
Thank you, Advocate Mothibi. You kept very much to time. I do want to just ask you one question before I go on to Advocate Batohi, which is, you talk about the special tribunal. I'd just like you to quickly say what that is, because there will be people on this webinar who don't necessarily know what you're referring to. What is the relationship between the special tribunal and the SIU? There are people on this webinar from all over the world and all over Southern Africa, but as concise as possible, please.
That's right. No, thank you very much. A special tribunal is set up in terms of the Special Investigating Unit and Special Tribunals Act. That is a tribunal which consists of about 9 judges up to now, is proclaimed by the president. That tribunal has been set up to specifically adjudicate on matters of investigations emanating from the Special Investigating Unit. It's an independent special tribunal. It's a tribunal to adjudicate and hear and fast-track civil litigation. We've pursued it simply because we have realized that if we queue in the ordinary courts with other litigants, that has led to the delay in the civil litigation, and that has intermittently led to the delay in the cancellation of contracts and the recovery that we all need to see. So it's an alternative tribunal from the ordinary courts to adjudicate on civil litigation matters, civil recoveries, and also forfeiture orders. Thank you.
Thank you. And we may come back to that a little bit later on. So Advocate Mothibi, you referred to progress. I think probably Advocate Batohi is tired of hearing questions posed this way, but for members of the public, they'll think progress is when I see people arrested and when I see people in prison and when I see that crime doesn't pay. Advocate Batohi, you're the National Director of Public Prosecutions. You don't have to answer my question or even start with it, but I'm sure you'll want to perhaps reflect on it at some point. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yes, I agree with you. That's the big question. But before that, yes, let me greet my fellow panelists. And you're right, we meet on this virtual platform, but yes, I think we might be getting quite tired of each other. We meet so frequently, but I think it's an indication of the collaboration that is happening between the key law enforcement agencies. And so in that regard, I think one of the most important points to make is that what is really encouraging is the fact that the law enforcement agencies are coming together to deal with this. And your point at the beginning was, that this has shocked everyone. It has indeed, because given what South Africa had just come out of in the past 10 years or so with regard to corruption in this country. When COVID hit us and there was all of this relief funds that was becoming available, I really didn't think that the extent of that people would be, the extent of corruption with regard to people putting their hands into the COVID-19 release fund cookie jar, to put it in that way, was just unbelievable. And so the challenge that we face as law enforcement is that we were already reeling from the effects of corruption pre-COVID. And we were already reeling from the effects of the weakening of state institutions pre-COVID. And we were on a trajectory to really try to rebuild and capacitate institutions to deal with pre-COVID corruption. And then COVID hit us. And so I really have to, emphasize that in as much as a lot of good work is going on, and certainly General Lebeya will talk, no doubt, to the Fusion Center. So perhaps I will leave it to him to go into a lot more detail about what's happening there. In as much as a lot of good work is happening and the wheels of justice are turning, there are huge challenges. And so, the role you asked, we should touch on what's the role of the different agencies. So the role of the National Prosecuting Authority is really to prosecute cases and to recover the proceeds of crime, asset forfeiture. And that is, those are the two key elements of the strategy to deal with corruption. One is investigate and prosecute and hold people accountable so that there are consequences, so that, people receive prison sentences or whatever the appropriate consequences are. And the other part of it is to get back the money. And so in dealing with both of these, the challenges are immense. And, you're right, when you started off, you said at the end of the day, what people really want to see is that people are being arrested and prosecuted and are, in fact, being committed to prison if that is the sentence that is appropriate in a particular case. And that is the reality. And so, there's excellent work. The Fusion Center is really a coordinating hub. That's the best way of putting it, where staff members from each of the institutions that are represented sit in the hub and basically in the same space, physically in the same room, but social distancing, etc. But in order to fast track cases that are identified. Now, General Lebeya can give you statistics about the numbers of cases, etc. But what we're finding is that we need to capacitate the regions, because what needs to be understood is, even though we at a high level coordinate our efforts, end of the day, implementation happens in the provinces. Implementation happens in the regions. It's the hawks in terms of the investigative capacity. That is after the SIU investigations happen. Maybe I should just add that once the SIU completes investigation and if they find evidence of criminality, they refer the matter to the National Prosecuting Authority. But of course, we don't have an investigative capacity generally. And so it then moves on to the DPCI, who does the investigations, and we work together with them in terms of collaboration. And so the point I want to make is that the work happens in the regions. So we need, and the directors of public prosecutions, and they throughout in each of the divisions, they are the ones who work together with the head of the hawks in the regions, or you have prosecutors working with investigators on the regions, and that is where the work actually happens. And the directors of public prosecutions are the ones who take the decisions to prosecute or not. And maybe I want to emphasize this to make it clear that the national director does not take decisions to prosecute or not to prosecute. Those decisions are taken by the various directors of public prosecutions throughout the country. So if one wants to make the argument that law enforcement has been captured and targeting people, etc., it means all of the regions, that's got to be happening in a very systematic way across the country to do that. So the point, Mark, is that we are still, resources remain a challenge. And, we had a meeting just last week where we talked about this, and the investigations, in as much as we're trying and things are moving much quicker than we had hoped it would, or we thought it would, given what has happened in the recent past, we still have challenges with investigative capacity, with prosecutorial capacity. We are filling posts. COVID hit, the impact of COVID also has been, we were not able to recruit as fast as possible. But I think government needs to decide how important it is for law enforcement to be properly capacitated. And in prioritizing funds, we have to think, what are the most important institutions that need the capacity and capability? Because capacitating law enforcement is an investment in the country. And so, I can say so much about it, but these are just introductory words. And General Advocate Dr. Lebeya will certainly speak to just the Fusion Center work, which is really exciting, which shows that law enforcement can come together and work in a collaborated way, in a spirit of collaboration, because it's the only way we can do it. But we are far from where, as a national director, and I mentioned this, General Lebeya knows, just last week we had a meeting, I said, the people want to see prosecution and they want to see consequences. And at the end of the day, that needs to move faster. And so we're trying to put a lot more efforts into that under very challenging circumstances. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Advocate Batohi. It seems like all roads lead to General Advocate Dr. Lebeya, who is going to be our next person to speak. But before I hand over to Dr. Lebeya, and you've mentioned the Fusion Center, and he's the chairperson, General Lebeya, and he will speak about that. I just want to pick up on one point you said, Advocate Batohi, to agree with it, and I see there's already a question to Advocate Mothibi about it, which is your point about the regions. We're seeing the crisis in the Eastern Cape at the moment of new infections and deaths and collapse of health systems. And all of those are intimately connected to corruption, which has been uncontrolled in that province for many years in the health department. And if we can't get your agencies down to that level, then it's going to be very hard to win this battle. So I just want to say I concur from personal experience that this is a critical insight that you provided us with. So thank you very much. General Lebeya, the head of the Hawks, can I hand over to you now to talk about your role, about progress, about challenges that you face? Thank you.
Thank you very much, facilitator, and good evening once more to the members of the panel as well as the participants. Firstly, I just need to indicate that the Hawks, which is a nickname for the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, is a directorate within the South African Police Service. Part of its mandate is to deal with the national priority offenses. Amongst these national priority offenses include serious organized crime, serious commercial crime, and serious corruption. So those are part of the matters that we deal with in the DPCI. I will not be dealing with the other areas, but safe to say that I think we are aware that we get involved when it comes to cash in transit robberies, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and various other activities that we get involved. But for today, the focus is on the issue relating to PPEs that came to visit us when the COVID-19 came in. We will recall that the state of disaster was declared in March, and then emanating from those, procurements have to be done in a particular way. Included in those type of procurement, that is where we started observing that there are indeed some of the violations of the laws. We then said that there is a need to respond to these challenges. It is based on those challenges emanating from the irregular procurements and fraud relating to acquisition that the Fusion Center was activated to not only deal with the matters that it was involved in, but to also deal with the issues relating to procurement on PPEs. In that space, there are representatives from different environment, law enforcement, community, prosecution, the SIU, the FIC, and others, SARS, you name it. So it is the representative from various law enforcement that participate to ensure that we share the information to enable speedy investigation and finalization of matters. In that space, we receive not only reports that come as a result of affidavits, we also focus on the media space to ensure that everything that is highlighted in the public space, we look at that. It is based on that you will see that since May the 18th to be specific, that we started working at the Fusion Center, there has been 231 matters that we got seized with. Amongst these matters, you have got 128. They are just incidents that we conduct inquiries coming from various areas, including the newspapers, the media, both visual and as well as some sources. So from this, we also have 88 criminal dockets. Those are matters that we now know crime has been committed. And it is in those that we have to ensure that there is sufficient evidence that is placed in the docket so that when we present before the National Prosecuting Authority, which of course keep on guiding us, that there is sufficient to make a decision so that we may be able to secure the attendance of the accused persons in court. I must say that out of this, 68 of them came very late. You will recall that there was a report that was brought forward by the Auditor General of South Africa in August. That actually came with 68 criminal dockets that we are looking at. So it is the one that added to increase the number to 88. So both the detective service from the greater SAPS and the DPCI are investigating these matters. We have already taken 11 of these cases to court. That speaks to 26 accused persons. So 26 accused persons are now standing accused at court. We expect, as the National Director of Public Prosecution have already indicated, that we need to be seeing more. You can understand that before this came in, as she have hinted, we were seized with other corruption, fraud matters. I think I can't remind us that you can recall the municipalities that we had to put a task team to deal with those, and there were several arrests that we have made. There are other tender irregularities that from time to time you will hear that certain matters have been taken through to court. So these are part of the work that when the COVID-19 came in, we were busy with. But we have got task teams that are investigating these matters. As the NDPP have indicated that at the Fusion Center, there is coordination, but the work itself is done by teams that are regions. Within the DPCI, we have in each province task team that are focused on this. We had to take from other existing matters as these ones need to be finalized speedily. We have noted that there are also challenges. Among the main challenges, obviously, is the human resources. But in this regard, we appreciate the investment that the government have done by providing us the necessary finance. We have, I think last month, we have recruited more than 100, and we are continuously increasing the capacity. We expect that our number will increase to ensure that we are able to effectively respond to these challenges. I wouldn't be making a breakdown of where these cases are, but safe to say that the majority of these cases, we happen to see that they have been happening in Gauteng, which is also the area where a number of arrests have been effected. I must say that you pointed out some of the challenges in other provinces, some such as the Eastern Cape. You can expect that we will again be visiting that province. We will not be leaving Limpopo alone or Gauteng. But this is but some of the commitments that are there in the teams that we have around the country. I will obviously be responding to some of the things that may be raised during the discussion. With those remarks, let me say thank you very much once more for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you very much, General Lebeya. Just before I go back to Advocates Batohi and Mothibi, and I'm going to take them to the question of recovery of resources, just to give them advance warning. But General Lebeya, there's a perception in the public mind, or a lot of the focus has been on PPE corruption, and you mentioned it yourself. Is the corruption much more widespread than that? Can you just very briefly tell us if there are other areas which you have seen as being very vulnerable to malfeasance?
The corruption, as I've indicated, is not only restricted to PPEs. As you can see, the number of cases that involve PPEs is 103 in total. So that for us, from the time that we started with the procurement in the space of PPEs from March this year up to date, it suggests that we do not have as much as one would expect. But you shall observe that 128 are matters that from time to time have been raised, which we are also looking at those. But the critical areas that we find that there is corruption is in the municipalities. That is where corruption is happening in the majority. And even the cases that we have at the anti-corruption task team, which are not this one that I'm talking about at the Fusion Center, at the greater ACTT, the majority of these cases are happening at the municipalities. So that is the area where the majority of corruption are being generated. We don't rule out the other entities, state companies, but the majority is in the municipalities. Thanks.
Thank you. That's very helpful. and because there was in fact a question drawing your attention to the municipalities. People who are using the chat, please continue. It's going to be very difficult to get all of your questions in just over an hour, but put them down, because the SIU, the NDPP, the Directorate of Priority Crimes Investigation are all on here. They'll all be able to look at things that are said in the chat as well. And just one other thing to all three before I go to Advocate Batohi and Advocate Mothibi. Noticed in chat quite a few people talking about the need for improved transparency about your progress of your different agencies. I see the Treasury now has a dashboard on its website that allows you to see COVID-19 expenditure, the biggest contracts, etc. I think a lot of people worried about corruption would be reassured if there was an easier way for you to keep the public informed of progress on some of these cases. But going back now, Advocate Batohi, I'll come to you first, and to Advocate Mothibi. This question of recovery of the loot. I think I saw a figure somewhere saying that about 150 million rand had been recovered. That seems like small change compared to billions looted. Is that unfair of me to say that? And can you talk about the processes to recover money? First Advocate Batohi, and then I'll go to Advocate Mothibi on the same question, the processes and the institutions.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. I think it's not unfair to say that. I suppose, let me rephrase that. In the context of how much of money has been lost, I agree that that is not a substantial amount. But it is, when you think of the process and what has happened in the asset forfeiture space in recent times, then that picture is certainly going to change, but one can then understand why we are in this situation. Asset forfeiture is a very particularly, well, we're focusing on COVID-19 corruption. And I think if you look at COVID-19 corruption, then the speed with which we've moved, some of the asset forfeiture matters have been really good. And so our figures there are actually, if you just look at COVID related, they actually quite, I think just the UIF, in the UIF space, there have been some good seizures. In fact, just last week, there was 117 million in KwaZulu-Natal that was placed under preservation. So there's been really good success in that regard. But I have to premise all of this by saying the following. The asset forfeiture unit didn't escape the tentacles or the consequences of what happened in the past 10 years. And so it is such an important capability in the National Prosecuting Authority in this country for us to bring back the money. But it's again a process of capacitating, and it's only in June this year that the Deputy National Director heading up the asset forfeiture unit, Advocate Rabaji, was appointed. Prior to that, there were acting people in the space, and asset forfeiture was really not doing as well as it should be doing. Advocate Rabaji now at the helm, she's putting in place a number of initiatives to capacitate the asset forfeiture unit and to make sure that we're able to bring back the money, not just COVID-19 corruption, but generally. I mean, it's been estimated that almost a third of our GDP of the country has been stolen through corruption. And asset forfeiture plays a huge role in trying to bring back that money. A large percentage of that is suspected of having left our shores. And so the importance of mutual legal assistance and working with other countries to be able to bring back the money is often a very complex and complicated process. And it often also depends on which countries you're dealing with and the will of those countries to cooperate with you. But we have been, in fact, just this week or last week, there was a 5-day training session which involved, we worked with a number of other countries, with law enforcement in other countries to actually, and with law enforcement in South Africa with asset forfeiture. We had the FIC there, really training and capacitating prosecutors and investigators to be able to deal with all of the processes, to understand how money moves globally and to understand the legal framework of trying to bring back the money. So that was a really, hopefully we'll see the fruits of all of this capacitation initiatives that are taking place at the moment to bring back the money. So I think, what I can say, and we report in Parliament, and I agree, perhaps, we want to be transparent, we want to be accountable, because I think part of the challenges of the NPA of the past was that lack of accountability for various things, including decision making. We do account, of course, to the people of South Africa through Parliament, and we account on with regard to our progress on various initiatives, on our particular performance. And asset forfeiture has not been great. And when we went to Parliament the last time and reported on this, we in fact committed to Parliament that picture will change when we next report to the people of South Africa, that you will see that all of the, to put in place the systems, processes, and building blocks before you can see the fruit of that is hugely important. But, I know the people of the country are tired of words and assurances and things. They want to see action. They want to see that money is coming back into the country. But these are very complex processes. But we have made a commitment that the investment in the NPA, in the asset forfeiture unit in particular, as well as those entities dealing with corruption and other forms of commercial or economic crime, is hugely important, because it'll be a return of an investment. We will bring back the money, and bringing back the money will instill confidence. And we have to remember that the money that was stolen was money that was destined for the poorest and most vulnerable, to provide basic infrastructure, basic services. And people tend to forget that the money that was stolen was actually destined to improve the lives of the poor and the vulnerable, but that it went into the pockets of a select few powerful and rich entities. And so, and when the DPPs are making decisions to prosecute, there's, we are feeling let me say that there's all kinds of allegations and accusations that are emerging. And we expect that. But at the end of the day, we as law enforcement have to continue to do what we have to do and focus on the work, not be distracted. And as far as we're concerned, this is not a political issue. It is a law enforcement, rule of law issue. And we have to do what we have to do to hold people accountable and to bring back the money.
Thanks, Advocate Batohi. And again, I think we're hearing you on this question of resources and the need for adequate resources for each of these agencies. And I often, when I see the SIU's ever-growing list of investigations, I wonder about capacity. And this was before COVID even came along.
And if I may add, it's not just about numbers. It's not only about numbers. It's about the skills, the highly complex skills that are required to investigate. It's about building those capacities. That's hugely important.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Advocate Mothibi, you're on the other end. There's the assets forfeiture unit, there's the SIU and the special tribunal. Can you answer my question as well about recovering funds? And can you also, I've been reading in the newspaper about accounts being frozen, pensions being frozen. What's in your armory? Not just to recover, but perhaps there are times when you can't yet recover, but at least you can stop it disappearing overseas, as Advocate Batohi has said. You can keep the money in the country.
Yes. Yes, Mark. One of the strategies of ensuring that we are effective at recovery, as SIU, one of the outcomes over and above the civil litigation and the criminal referrals that Advocate Batohi referred to. We do also make disciplinary referrals. So to date, we have made about 25 disciplinary referrals, and those they range from heads of the department, heads of SCM in Gauteng, the Deputy Director General, and the Chief Financial Officer in Northwest. It's directors, chief directors, and all of that. So what we do is that we've seen a phenomenon in government that when people are faced with disciplinary hearings, they submit their resignations and they leave. So we thought it appropriate that one of the strategies of recovery, of ensuring that at least when orders are made to recover, we do not get what we call hollow judgments, where there's really nothing much to recover. But amongst others, we've said it appropriate to freeze the pensions so that it sends out a message that you cannot just be found in the wrong and submit your resignation and leave. So we will have access and to your pension. So Mark, as we speak to date, and the special tribunal has proved to be a very important and effective tool in the armory of the anti-corruption fight that we are on.
We've lost you, Advocate Mothibi. I'm not sure if it's just me.
No, he seems to have frozen. We can't hear him either.
Okay. Whilst we're waiting for Advocate Mothibi to come back, question first to General Lebeya, and I'm sure Advocate Batohi would also maybe reflect on it. General Lebeya, this crime around COVID-19, is there an overlap with existing syndicates that are operating corruptly in government through procurement and so on? Or is it something that is just a bunch of opportunists who took advantage of more lax treasury rules to go in and give contracts to friends? Is it something new, or is it just part of what we've already been battling with?
Thank you very much for the question. Maybe before I answer that one, I can also add what my two colleagues have indicated regarding the issue of the assets recovery and the freezing. They have spoken about their two environments. In terms of the Fusion Center, which we do under pillar number 4, there are other entities that are today not participating, which is the Financial Intelligence Center, as well as the SARS. So there are also issue of freezing and recovery that is happening in that space. The amount that they are mentioning, one should keep in mind that there will be those. The question of whether the criminals or the syndicates involved in this PPE overlap with others, we cannot rule out that possibility, but we are usually guided by each specific group that is involved in a particular activities. You will note that there are those that are happening in the municipalities, and there are already investigation relating to the municipality. There is always some administrators that may, from time to time, have played a role. But we can't say that it is really involved. We can say that it is individuals who have taken an opportunity of the relaxation of the way in which we procure these resources that utilize that to commit corruption and fraud. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Advocate Batohi, would you like to add anything?
No, I'm not sure what the intelligence is saying around that, but what I can say is that, what is clear is that corruption pre-COVID and post-COVID has been enabled because of systems and because of lack of proper controls in various government entities relating to supply chain management, relating to procurement processes. And so that is where the challenge is. And, pre-COVID, I recall when there was a meeting of various DGs that took place, and a DG of Treasury, they said there's two aspects to dealing with, to trying to ensure that, and this was right at the beginning in terms of us organizing ourselves. He said there's a proactive side where departments, municipalities need to ensure that there's proper risk identification, that there's proper risk mitigation controls that are put in place to ensure that we don't experience during COVID what we did pre-COVID. And that needed to be really strong to ensure that law enforcement is not now burdened with trying to deal with these issues, because upfront, the relevant risk mitigating factors were not strong enough to ensure that corruption didn't happen. So I think it's that's really important, because that is where the tightening up of systems and processes proactively to deal with this, because at the end of the day it lands up on law enforcement, and now we have to put in, government's got to find money, more money to recover money to hold people accountable, when if proactively this was done in all of the entities concerned, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Thank you. Thank you. It seems like we've lost Advocate Mothibi. Advocate Mothibi, if you come back, just jump in at any point. I can't see you at the moment. Somebody said looters hacked one of the panelists. I'm not sure. But we're coming towards a close anyway. I just have a couple more questions, again, to both General Lebeya and Advocate Batohi. General Lebeya, you mentioned the involvement of the FIC in the Fusion Center and of SARS as well. Is the Attorney General's office part of the Fusion Center? Because I think you or Advocate Batohi mentioned their August report. And I guess one of the questions— I
think you mean the Auditor General, not the Attorney General.
Sorry, the Auditor General, sorry. Absolutely, my apologies. Is the Auditor General as well? Because, they issued a report in August. There's another report, I believe, due in the middle of this week, this coming week. And as I look at what's going on, I see so much wasteful expenditure as well, and irregular expenditure. And I wonder sometimes, do I count that as corruption? Let me give you an example. It's part of the public record. In Gauteng, 350,000 Rand was spent decontaminating documents in one department. It doesn't seem justifiable to me. The Department of Basic Education spent 98 million Rand decontaminating classrooms. It seems odd to me. There's big issues around health and infrastructure. Are these issues, Advocate Batohi and Advocate Lebeya, for you, or are they first of all issues for the Attorney General that may then, Auditor General, that may find their way to you ultimately? General Lebeya first.
Thank you very much. In terms of the FIC's involvement, I have explained that part of their involvement include working closely with the private sector, such as the banking community. We have in South Africa the SAMLIT organization that working closely with the FIC assist us at the Fusion Center to be able to get the necessary evidence that we need. How the Auditor General of South Africa get involved, they are not brought in to do operations. We separate those. They have got their own responsibility, being a Chapter 9 institution, including the public protector and others. So once we have received that information, we analyze the information that they provided in terms of criminal investigation. They do theirs in terms of samples and the like, and provide us to look at it and provide feedback. So we are engaging on that one. From time to time, our Fusion Center will be engaging them. Where there is a need for clarity, we do. So we consult them as the experts in their field, but we don't bring them into the operations itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can just add a little to that. Yes, we had a very good meeting before the passing of the sad passing of the previous Auditor General, with whom we work very, very closely, and the current one. But he basically introduced their report, and we committed to engagement with them. So there's very close engagement. The Auditor General's office is regarded as one of the important stakeholders in this, but they don't actually sit in the Fusion Center. But there's very close collaboration, and in fact, the reports have been analyzed, and there's a whole lot of information relating to many of the activities that the Auditor General has identified as possibly something that the law enforcement needs to look at. And so we are compiling a report for the Auditor General, and there may well be an inclusion in the second report with regard to some of these activities that has moved into the law enforcement space.
Thank you, Advocate Batohi. And then it seems like we really have lost the head of the SIU, but a question I saw a couple of times on the chat: how can civil society help your efforts better? Civil society is part of the Health Sector Anti-Corruption Forum, but what could we do to make your job Advocate General there? Oh, Mothibi.
Yes. I'm sorry about that.
You want to pick up where you left off?
Yeah, Mark, just in brief, I really apologize for all these intermittent disconnections. But I was just indicating that, the experience that we have seen and our observation is that, and I hope I had already responded to the questions that were posed to me when I was cut off. The last question I was responding to was the investigations into the Medical Council for Medical Schemes. The investigation is ongoing. We've been able to now identify 13 lifestyle audits that we are busy with. We have referred one disciplinary hearing for an executive. So that's another important investigation in the health sector. So all I really want to say, perhaps as my parting shot, is that the more we show consequence management, the more we show that we can do effective investigations and hold people to account, we will succeed in dealing with the culture of impunity. The history where law enforcement agencies were showing inaction, that we must make a history, and it must be behind us, where we now are geared up for effective investigations, effective consequence management, be it civil recoveries, disciplinary processes, and criminal prosecutions. So Mark, I want to pause here and say thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Advocate Mothibi, and you're right, our time is almost up. So I'm going to give each of the panelists a few minutes for any concluding comments. Anything that you think is important that I may not have asked, or that you may have seen in the chat. But I'd also ask two particular questions in your closing reflections. Do you think that the crisis caused by COVID-19 corruption has been beneficial in a strange way by getting the law enforcement agencies to work better together, that's not very good English, but better together, more quickly, more efficiently than was the case before? And do you think, can you tell the members, the public who are watching on TV tonight and on this webinar, do you think we're more corruption foolproof at the end of 2020 as a result of the rude awakening than we were at the beginning of this year? I'll go to you, General Lebeya, first, then to Advocate Batohi and Advocate Mothibi. I'll give you a last opportunity if you want, and then we'll have to say farewell to each other.
Thank you.
General Lebeya.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Firstly, the question of what is that which the public could do to participate in the fight against corruption. I will call upon all South Africans, firstly, to resist the temptation of getting involved in corruption. That is the first thing, that corruption is happening because of the people in South Africa getting involved in corrupt activities. So it is the first call that I say that let's resist the temptation of being involved in corruption. Secondly, I'm calling upon the South African, whoever have got information regarding corrupt activities, to report that to the law enforcement agencies. There are several numbers that are given, several institutions where the information can be provided, even the visitation to some of the units where the information can be provided. I think that that will really assist to ensure that we are, as a collective, able to deal with corruption. The third aspect, whether it has been beneficial, the coming in of COVID for law enforcement to work together or to be able to speed up matters, it can be argued both ways. Before the COVID came in, we were already putting the fusion center methodology of working in place. We have done that last year. But the coming in of COVID obviously ensured that we specifically take resources elsewhere and focus them on COVID-related activities. So in that regard, it helps to speed up matters. So it is both ways on that one. Whether we can say that by the end of the year we are foolproof with regard to corruption, we can't say that one. I think all what we can say is that there are visible signs that there are consequences when you get involved in corruption. We will be visiting several of those who get involved in corruption. And I think that there were signs that several individuals were visited, and we are still going to do that even in the coming year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Lebeya. Advocate Batohi.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I think we had already pre-COVID started very good collaboration with law enforcement agencies. But the coming together as a collective in the Fusion Center has certainly, we've learned lessons from that in terms of what could work, what works well, what doesn't work so well, what we need to improve on. So in that sense, I think there's been a lot of good lessons that we can take from that, and that certainly is beneficial to law enforcement. In terms of what civil society can do, I mean, civil society plays such an important role. And I think really in holding us accountable, to start off with, holding government accountable, holding us accountable, which civil society has done really well, to continue to do that. But also, there are various initiatives that we are involved in terms of building capacity And if civil society can assist in that regard would be really important for us. And at the end, and civil society to protect us when we start getting attacked. And we will be. We will be left, right, and center. And it's going to be very hard. And of course, if we are not doing the right thing, then of course we are not deserving of any protection. But really, there's for civil society, we as law enforcement are committed to the rule of law, to doing the right thing, to being held accountable, and civil society assisting us in that is hugely important. I think in terms of whether we foolproof, we are far from it. We've only just begun this long journey. It's not going to be easy or quick, but we have to keep very focused and remain on this journey. There's so much that needs to be done. It's ethical, starting off with ethical leadership. There's still corruption in our own ranks. In our own institutions, we are dealing with corruption within our entities. And so it is extremely difficult working in this environment where sometimes you still don't know who to trust and who you're working with. Perhaps one area of whistleblower protection, I want to put it on the table. That is such an important aspect, and maybe civil society can assist more in that regard. But we do need to have a really robust whistleblower protection framework to really protect those that stand up and speak out, because it's not difficult, particularly when you're dealing with powerful and rich people. So I think that is a hugely important. With regard to the NPA, we're really trying to strengthen integrity in our organization. We're trying to deal with, a roadmap for a truly independent NPA that we can say is corruption-proof, is foolproof. But right now, we are far from it, regrettably. But we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Batohi, and thank you for mentioning whistleblowers. It's been a constant theme across these 4 webinars that whistleblowers are vital to this, but they're not being sufficiently protected when they do that. So that's all of our responsibilities, and of course the state's responsibility as well, because it's critical. Advocate Mothibi, I hope that doesn't mean we lost you at the last moment when you were about to have your parting comment. I can't see you. Advocate Mothibi, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, I can.
Okay, as I said, because of the network issues, the camera keeps switching on and off. But I'll just proceed now if I'm really audible. Mark,
you're audible. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Mark, I really want to commend the Health Sector Anti-Corruption Forum for the work that it continues to do. We have seen the most important role that civil society can play. You know that we've got Section 27, we've got Corruption Watch, and we've got the whole of government participating in that sector. We have seen the value that they bring, reporting matters, making sure that those matters are put through the investigation process, and ultimately to results and consequence management. That has become a blueprint where other sectors have really learned that this kind of fora are really helpful. Mark, another important aspect to note is that as we are gearing up to ensuring that we investigate effectively and bring out the results, another important part is the prevention side. The prevention side of the fight against corruption. And at this stage, the public, of course, may be aware, but if not, the National Anti-Corruption Strategy has been approved and signed off by Cabinet. And of course, that doesn't mean that we didn't have a strategy, but that's really just a consolidation now that wants to improve on how we do things. And that also puts premium on the input of civil society. So we look forward to even an improved fight against corruption, including public private sector, labor, civil society, and business. So we are going to see that on an ongoing basis. But Mark, my parting shot to the public is that the pendulum is turning, and to those who continue to be engaged in corrupt activities, as my colleague General Lebeya said, we are coming for you. The results are there. We are geared up to ensure that we leave no stone unturned to make sure that all those are addressed. And the collaboration of the law enforcement agencies has really proved that if we put all our efforts to it, the results can show. Of course, we still need to continue to ensure that we produce even more results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate Mothibi. And let me thank all three of you panelists in closing. We've gone into overtime tonight. I know that you are all extremely busy people. That's probably an understatement, and under enormous pressure. I would also just like to take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of society for your efforts and for your team's efforts, and for the first time for a long time giving us people in charge of our law enforcement agencies who we can trust and who we can be proud of. But as Advocate Batohi said, we have a long way to go, but we're in this boat together. I also just want to thank, in parting, given this is the last webinar of the year, those people who have worked behind the scenes to put this together, from the SIU, Ndu, Nkomalo, Pranesh Maharaj, from Corruption Watch, Kavisha Pillay, from Section 27, my team at Maverick Citizen, and others. Thank you all. I hope I haven't left anybody out, but thank you for helping us to create transparency and to make public discussions of these issues. What I want to say just in closing is thank you, everybody who's still on the line. Stay safe. Take the government's public health advice very, very, very seriously. In coming weeks and days, it is possible to stop a second wave. It doesn't have to happen. It depends on us. We can stop COVID-19 just as we are capable of stopping corruption. And at this moment in time, we have a responsibility to do both things. So thank you, panelists. Thank you, participants.
Mark, if you permit, and on behalf of my colleagues, we would also like to thank you for a sterling facilitation of all these webinars. We thank you, and we look forward to your continued guidance going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's been a privilege, and good night, everybody. I'm going to click us out. Good luck with your continued hard work. Thank you, General Lebeya. Thank you, Advocate Batohi. Thank you, Advocate Mothibi. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.